Before I start the video, as a quick reminder, check out my links down below to help support the channel. I am now in partnership with Baron of Dice. They have some awesome TCG accessories like playmats, deck boxes, and dice. And if you want to level up your setup, it is the perfect way to do so. And if you want to support the channel directly and get some sweet perks, consider joining the Patreon. If you want to get early access to videos or even some deck help, Patreon is where it's at. And so without further ado, let's get back into the video. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin with Jurassic Magic, and with the exciting news of Monster Hunter collaborating with Magic the Gathering in the form of a Secret Lair, I couldn't be any more excited. I played a couple of the games. I'm not like a super expert on Monster Hunter, but I absolutely put so much hours into Monster Hunter World. I just loved that game so much for the challenge, and of course there is one boss many people fear in that game, and that would be Fatalis. And let me tell you, I still have nightmares on trying to beat him over and over again. I actually beat him once, but after that, I was just completely spent and completely beat. I feel like that was definitely the most rewarding, probably one of the most rewarding besides God of War Valkyries, kind of a challenge I've ever played. Mainly because Fatalis has a high damage input, and it's very hard to kind of go against him, because one false move and you're dead, and one other false move and you're dead again. Again, it took a long time for me to beat that boss, but eventually I did. That was a while ago, though. I feel like I need to talk to my therapist about the PTSD this boss gave me, but besides that point, this is going to be a video about Fatalis himself, and because this is a reskin, this is going to be a commander that you've seen before, but I'm going to try to do a fresh new take on him, so let's get it started. So first things first, let's go over Fatalis the Black Dragon and what it does. So it is a reskin of Ziatora the Incinerator, so this did come out a while ago in Streets of New Capenna. However, I wanted to go over it again just to see what kind of strategy we're going to go with. So for 3 black, red, and a green, it has flying, and at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Fatalis deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasure tokens, and he has a 6/6 body. So this is actually one of my favorite strategies of all time. Flinging creatures at opponents' faces, dealing damage equal to their power is just absolutely a blast. Even though it's not probably going to be super powerful in my opinion, it still is very fun, probably towards a bracket 2, bracket 3 playstyle. If you get a big enough creature on the battlefield, you could potentially just fling it at somebody else and potentially make them lose the game. So overall, this is very exciting. I'm super excited to brew around this again. But if this isn't your jam, there is 2 other Gen color combination commanders in that color identity of black, red, and green. So the first one up is Nargacuga, and this is basically the dragon that hunts other dragons, and honestly is a very cool boss. And if you wanted to add it as your commander, you could easily do so by swapping Ziatora. I tried to make this deck a modal deck where you could swap all 3 of these commanders and they'll just do fine. However, Nargacuga is a reskin of Vivictus Asmati the Dire. This is a very fun, random, chaotic commander that absolutely fits the flavor of Nargacuga, because whenever Nargacuga attacks, for each player, choose target permanent that player controls. Those players sacrifice those permanents. Each player who sacrificed a permanent this way reveals the top card of their library, then puts it onto the battlefield if it's a permanent card, and it has a 6/6 body too. So this one is interesting. I love the concept of just sacrificing maybe a land and potentially getting a huge creature onto the battlefield. This also could get rid of some certain effects, like if somebody has a Rhystic Study, you could just choose that target permanent, they have to sacrifice it, and if they're playing a spell slinger thing, most likely they are, because they're playing Rhystic Study and they reveal a instant or sorcery spell and not a permanent spell, they can't put it onto the battlefield because it's not a permanent. It's just going to stay on top of their library, which acts as great removal. This almost reminds me of Chaos Warp in a little bit of a different twist. So Nargacuga is a fantastic commander choice. Definitely could swap it out with Ziatora. But now let's move on to the other Gen commander too, and that would be none other than Nargacuga, Ever-Present Shadow. This is a reskin of Wasitora, which is a pretty good commander in its own right. I don't think it's as powerful as the others, but again, this one is pretty cool. I love the art on this one. It has flying and trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player sacrifices a creature of their choice. If that player can't, you create a 3/3 black, red, and green cat dragon creature token with flying. I like this better as a option for the other 2, mainly because you're making those tokens if a player doesn't have a creature, you could sacrifice it to Ziatora to fling 3 damage at any target, or you could sacrifice it to Vivictus to get another permanent on the battlefield. Again, with all 3 of these commanders, I feel like you could switch and swap them over, and I think the deck will do just fine because you're in that Jund sacrifice theme of sacrificing big creatures to put even bigger creatures onto the battlefield. That's all you're really doing anyways. But of course, there is more Secret Lair cards that can go in this deck that will be effective. There is the reskin of Razaketh the Foul-Blooded as Gore Magala, Rathalos King of the Skies reskinned as Drakuseth Maw of Flames, and Zinogre Lord of Lightning as a reskin of Sarulf Realm Eater. All these actually work pretty well in the deck too. Razaketh is a tutor when you sacrifice a creature, again Jund sacrifice. Drakuseth is just a big beater in the air that can remove some targets by dealing fire breathing damage to them, and Sarulf can act as removal for those little token creatures, or could just grow exponentially that you can fling in with Ziatora. So all these are going to be perfect in the deck too. Of course, there's other cards that I wanted to highlight, like Nargacuga Stalker. This is also pretty good too, because whenever a non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. So sacrificing a creature, whether it's Ziatora or even Vivictus, you're going to get a card draw off of that. I also like Tooth and Nail. This is also a great win con potentially. It's a little boring because it's a tutor for 2 creatures, and you can put them directly onto the battlefield if you entwine it. And you can put in Mizium Mortars too as a board wipe. It deals 4 damage to target creature you don't control. If you overload it, you'll do that damage to each creature you don't control. So overall, there's a lot of good cards in here that you could totally utilize in the Secret Lair to make the ultimate Monster Hunter Secret Lair deck. And that's what I'm trying to do. I want to make sure you could add as much cards as possible. That's why I believe this Jund color combination deck works perfectly. As the ultimate Monster Hunter deck, of course, you're not going to add in every individual card from the Secret Lairs, but you're going to be making the best boss as the commander with Fatalis the Black Dragon, or even Nergigante, Herald of Destruction. I feel like these 2 are probably the best out of the bunch, in my opinion, rather than the Cat Dragon. So now that I've discussed the Secret Lairs, I did want to go over the rest of the deck and what we're going to be including. Again, it's going to be a bracket 2, bracket 3 style deck, so I am going to add in 3 game changers and try to make this the most fitting Monster Hunter deck that you can make possible. So let's get it started with some staples. So most of the monsters in this deck are going to be high CMC, so it's very important to put a lot of ramp in here, mainly so that you could get them out on the battlefield fast and quickly, so that you could ruin someone else's day. So of course, Farseek effects, Nature Lores effects, or even Sky Shroud Claim effects, any of these to ramp further into your game plan is going to be essential. So ramp is very important, but you also do need a good amount of card draw. That's why I included effects like Life Legacy. You sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the amount of power. You could also include effects very similar to that, like Great or Good. This is one of my favorite options as far as card draw options go, because it is an enchantment on the battlefield. You can just sacrifice creatures left and right. If somebody has a board wipe, you can just draw a bunch of cards. You are going to be discarding cards in the process, but that is completely okay. But if you're not about sacrificing creatures because you want to sacrifice them to Ziatora, you could throw in cards like Return of the Wild Speaker, draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, or even Last March of the Ents, which is basically just a game winner. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness you control, then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. If you just have a big handful of creatures and you have 8 mana, but you have no creatures on the battlefield, this is still very powerful. Tap for 8 mana, you don't draw any cards, but you put all the creatures from your hand onto the battlefield. This is excellent. Definitely one of the game winners that you could put in this deck. So let me tell you, there is a ton of options as far as card draw goes, but you do also need interaction. That's why I do like the charms like Arch Enemy Charm and Arch Druid's Charm. I like both of these because of the versatility they do have. I do have an optimal land base, so the 3 different pips of all green or all black are not going to be too severe. However, these are so versatile. Arch Druid's Charm, even though it's all 3 green pips, it's going to be very easy to do because we have an efficient land base. It acts as a tutor, it acts as a bite effect, and you can exile target artifact or enchantment. This is doing everything you want to do in a Jund color combination deck. That also includes Arch Enemy's Charm. You can exile target creature or planeswalker. Exile removal is important more now than ever. You could also return 1 or 2 target creature cards or planeswalker cards from your graveyard to your hand. This is important because when we're sacrificing creatures to our commanders, we could just return them from the graveyard to our hand. And also, if anything else, that last ability is going to be very good with Ziatora. You put 2 1/1 counters on target creature you control. It gains lifelink until on a turn when you sacrifice a creature and deal damage equal to its power because of Ziatora's ability. You're going to gain that much life too and gain a ton of advantage. So both of these are going to be insane in the deck. There is some other removal like Assassin's Trophy or even Deadly Rollick that are perfect for removing threats on the battlefield, but I also love my redirect spells like Deflecting Swat. There are many versions of these like effects like Return the Favor or even Untimely Malfunction that will work perfectly in this deck just so that we can redirect those counter spells or or even removal spells to our opponent's face. So again, I just like to quickly go over the staples. I don't go over every individual staple in the deck, mainly because I feel like people are going to see the deck list and they're going to be like, oh yeah, of course we're going to add these. So again, didn't want to touch on them too much, but one thing I did want to touch on is cheating in creatures. Absolutely put these in. Cards like Monster Manual or even Sneak Attack are going to help you close out the game pretty fast. You cheat in a creature with Sneak Attack, it's going to die anyways. You're going to sacrifice it to one of your commanders that you choose, so it's going to be a good time no matter what. But Monster Manual I do like a little better, even though it's more of a one-time effect. It will still catch our opponents off guard because we could just tap it on our opponent's turn when they're swinging at us. We just put a huge creature on the battlefield, block with our creature. It's obviously very good with combat tricks. So of course those are some tech pieces, but obviously this is all about monsters. We need to have the best monsters in this list so that we can fling at our opponents. I love the Kamigawa dragons. Cards like Junji, Atsushi, and Kura are all perfect in this list because they do have dice triggers. They will give us a little bit more advantage. I personally like Junji the most because it will reanimate another non-dragon creature from the graveyard to the battlefield. That is going to be extra useful, though I do like Atsushi giving us treasure tokens when it dies, though Kura is not to be mistaken as one of the more powerful ones in this list, because if we have a lot of lands on the battlefield, we could just make an XX green spirit creature token when it dies based off of the number of lands we control so that we could sacrifice it again and get some extra advantage out of it. Of course, I had to throw in Yargle and Multani. This is one of the biggest creatures that you could put in the list as far as power goes. 18 power, imagine flinging it at somebody for 18 damage. That is huge. Also, why not just increase the power of your creatures you control by using Zopandrel Hunger Dominus and Xenagos God of Revels? Doubling the power is going to be huge because then we get to fling more damage at our opponent's face. We could also throw in Twin Flame Tyrant in this conversation as well, because if a source you control deal damage to an opponent or a permanent the opponent controls, it deals double that damage instead. So obviously this is another great include. I also did throw in some fun ones too. I didn't want to make this super optimal. I also wanted to make this a full monster themed deck, so that's why I threw in Kogla the Titan Ape, as well as Xylortha Strength Incarnate, which is Godzilla King of Monsters. Godzilla is one of my favorite franchises ever. Of course, Kogla is a reference to King Kong. I threw in these more for flavor, obviously, though Kogla the Titan Ape is very powerful, acting as removal for creature removal or even artifact or enchantment removal when it swings at an opponent. Plus, Godzilla does have 7 power, so that's nothing to scoff at. He will definitely be more of a fun include if anything else. But if you are gearing the deck more towards Ziatora the Incinerator, Displaced Dinosaurs is one of the best cards that you could throw on this list. As a historic permanent enters the battlefield under your control, it becomes a 7/7 dinosaur creature in addition to its other types. What makes this so important, especially with a Ziatora deck, is the fact that when you sacrifice a creature, you will deal damage, but also you will make 3 treasure tokens. Why not make all those treasure tokens into 7/7 dinosaurs with Displaced Dinosaurs? I love this idea so much because then you have more and more creatures to fling in your arsenal than just creatures you put on the battlefield. Also within this deck, I did put a 2-card combo in here kind of by mistake because I do like these 2 cards separately outside of just the combo. I like them for their utility. Blightsteel Colossus is just a big giant creature that will deal infect damage to an opponent. It's 11/11, so just one swing away and they're dead essentially. But if you cast Chandra's Ignition, targeting Blightsteel Colossus, you'll be dealing 11 damage to each opponent in the form of infect. So of course that is going to win you the game with a 2-card combo, even though it is a very expensive combo, basically being 16 mana. Of course that can be reduced with like sneak attack like effects, cheating Blightsteel Colossus onto the battlefield, putting Chandra's Ignition on the stack and blowing everybody up. So with all that said, that is going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on this very special Secret Lair that I'm super excited to buy for myself. I am planning on making this deck too because I love Monster Hunter. I also love fling effects with Ziatora the Incinerator. Again, this is a bracket 2, bracket 3 deck, so it's not uber powerful, but again, I think it's going to be powerful enough where it can scale with different opponents. So that's why I like it a lot. I love the Monster Hunter series. I have yet to play Monster Hunter Wilds. I heard there was mixed reviews on it, so I'm just kind of waiting for it to go on sale on Steam. Though I will be honest, I do want to replay Worlds after seeing the Secret Lair. Maybe not so much because again, Fatalis is a very scary boss fight that I don't know if I have the guts to play against again. Either way, super excited for the Secret Lair. Are you super excited too? Again, it's not a super high value Secret Lair, but I do love the reskins. I love the art on them. I'm definitely going to get them myself. So on your way out, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.